Welcome back to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast, the podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we got a couple of things to get into. But before we get started, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest Orlando Magic podcasts here on the YouTube platform. With that being said, make sure you hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And shout out to today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. You can use the QR code in the corner right here or the link in the description to find out more. But we're going to go right into today's pod. And we have to start up with the dub. Close game, competitive matchup against the Sacramento Kings team that despite the fact that they should be considered a tanking squad at this juncture of the year, they were very competitive. I'll start with the Sacramento Kings side. Got a big game from DeMar DeRozan, 33 points, 6 rebounds, 11 assists. Got to the free throw line 10 times as well. Big game for somebody that if you didn't know his name before, you know his name now. Daquan Plowden had himself a night from beyond the arc. 23 points, 8 of 12 from the field, but 6 of 10 from beyond the arc. Across the board outside of that, pretty calm stats for everyone else. Devin Carter, 14 points. Malik Monk, 13 points. Maxime Reynaud, 10 points, 7 rebounds. Precious Achiuwa, 14 points, 9 rebounds. Nothing game-changing necessarily outside of, again, DeMar DeRozan and Plowden combining for 56 points. But other than that, nothing to write home about. I could say the same thing about the Orlando Magic, quite frankly, though. Now, if you participated in our Underdog Fantasy midweek segment from yesterday's episode coming into this game, you won yourself some pretty good money. Paolo Banchero, 30 points, and a total of, that would be 46 points plus points, rebounds, assists. So smashed the higher on that one. Same thing can be said for Desmond Bane. I believe his higher lower was somewhere around, I believe it was like 26.5 or somewhere around that. Desmond Bane, 23 points, no rebounds, but 6 assists to knock down at 30. And I think the higher lower I had on Desmond Bane was higher than 1.5 3-pointers made. I said I believe he would take like 5 to 6 of them. He took 6 and he hit 3 of them. So that was big. So if you put down some bread with us the other day, you came out on top. But I think the most important thing is that the Orlando Magic got the dub. Now, there's a split fence for this one for Magic fans because as we discussed yesterday's episode, there's some of us that believe that this would have been a perfect game to be the launching pad for change. You lose this game and the hot seat for Jamahl Mosley, something we'll talk about in a little bit, goes from really warm or very hot to scorching, if not disintegrated, right? And now you win that game, and there's 2 weeks left in the season. There's 2 weeks left in the season, and everything is quite out front of the Orlando Magic right now. Like, for a team that has dealt with so many flaws, gotten away with so many strong fourth quarters, this one included. Jalen Suggs played this game and only had 8 points and was 2 of 5 from 3. Mind you, he came into the game sick. I told you guys if he played, he was going to come in hobbled, which made me believe that there was even a likelihood that he may even miss the game entirely, just given the fact that his body was still going to be weak on short notice. But he comes in and in the final 27 seconds of the game, he hits one of the biggest threes of the night, despite the fact that he pretty much kind of struggled to get anything going offensively the entire game. But now it's all in front of you. Now it's all in front of you coming off of this Kings game. And this can be, we talk about this on the podcast a handful of different times. The words inflection or the phrase inflection point, right? This can be a inflection point, or for my gamers out there, this could be a save spot. This could be a flip in the story where when you get to a certain, in a game, when you get to a certain part where it auto saves, you know it's about to get lit right after. Like, they're only auto saving because there ain't nowhere for you to station up anytime soon. Like, it's about to get busy. And this is where the Orlando Magic are. They've had a handful of different inflection points. The Desmond Bane shot against the Portland Trail Blazers. Franz Wagner's initial injury. Franz Wagner going back down with that same injury, or I guess you could say the soreness from that injury, coming back from the Berlin and London game. You could say another inflection point could be him coming back for the Milwaukee Bucks games and then not returning after the All-Star weekend. You could say an inflection point was, quite frankly, you could say an inflection point was that Miami Heat game that was the last win the Magic got before this win over the Sacramento Kings. There's going to be a handful of these different checkpoints for a team in any given season. And I believe these are the ones that the Orlando Magic have stumbled upon. And I believe that this Sacramento Kings game could be another one. Now, there's only 9 games left in the season for the Magic and 2 weeks left. And this Kings game can be one. Again, Jalen Suggs coming back off of missing 2 games being sick, hitting a big shot. Desmond Bane, of his 23 points, he had 16, I believe, in the fourth quarter alone. That's a big-time thing for him because he's been a heroic fourth-quarter performer a lot of this season. Paulo Banchero, once again, for I believe the 4th time in 6 games with 30 points. This is a momentum shifter potentially for this Orlando Magic team. Again, for those who were like me from a pessimistic standpoint that thought, maybe we do want the Magic to lose this game because the bigger picture is that we need change to happen. That is true. But I think it would also, kind of sitting on it, pause, it would be one of those things where I would also say the Orlando Magic can't afford to miss the playoffs from a draft capital standpoint. And there's no guarantee, again, as a Bulls fan that has seen this in 4K more times than not, there's no guarantee that the Orlando Magic front office does not use Franz Wagner and Anthony Black's injuries as an anchor to stay to this team as it is, regardless of if they make the postseason or not. I believe there's a world where this team could miss the postseason and they would say, well, Franz and Anthony Black didn't play for basically the last month to 2 months. So the same way they could say, well, we made the playoffs and we didn't have Franz and Anthony Black. If we pushed the team to 6 games, imagine if we had our 2 guys back healthy. The same excuse could end up applying regardless. It's just the results would be different, but nonetheless, the team morale would still find itself in a place where we're still trying to figure out who we are moving forward. Now, do I believe I would be singing the same tune if Sacramento won? I don't know. I do think that heads would probably roll. I wrote an article about it yesterday. And to double down on that, Sports Illustrated wrote an article about it. And Orlando Magic Daily wrote an article about it. And we're going to talk about it in a moment. Jamahl Mosley's head is on a pike. Because Hoops Hype wrote an article about the 5 coaches on the hottest seat right now as far as their job with 2 weeks left in the NBA season. And Jamahl Mosley was ranked number 2. So this game could have been an inflection point from the perspective of this might have cost the coach the job. It's not like it hasn't been seen before. Taylor Jenkins, Mike Malone, right? Darvin Ham got fired with a positive winning record with the Milwaukee Bucks. By the way, number 1 on that list, ironically, was or is Doc Rivers for that same Milwaukee Bucks team. And I think the seat should still be very warm for Jamahl Mosley, regardless of the fact that they came out and won this game. Because in reality, a lot of people are going to say this is a game you're supposed to win. Regardless of how competitive they were, regardless of how well DeMar DeRozan played, regardless of the fact that Plowden had himself a night from beyond the arc. This is a game you're supposed to win as the Orlando Magic this late in the season. And coming off of losing that Indiana Pacers game, this was another one of those that would have really had people question not just the coach, but the team's integrity as far as what they feel they are when it comes to the playoffs. Do y'all just feel like you're a play-in team? And because there's so much margin for error left where, as far as making a play-in, we talked about this last podcast. There's no way for the Orlando Magic statistically to fall out of the play-in unless they just lose every game for the rest of the season. But statistically, they can get into the play-in tournament with the records as they are because the difference between just number 10 and number 5 in the Eastern Conference is a margin of 1.5 games. It's that close. And so this Sacramento Kings game would have been very telling in multiple ways, but it wouldn't have just been about Jamahl Mosley. Now, I think at the end of the day, Jamahl Mosley's coaching for his job. There's a world where Jamahl Mosley, even if they make the playoffs, still finds himself getting fired just simply out of the fact that this season and the turmoil around it might just call for enough change for them to still need to pull the trigger, which is what I believe the case should be anyway. I believe that the Orlando Magic can't get away with going another offseason without making any real significant moves, even if that means their only real move is moving off of the coach. That's the reality. I believe that Jamahl Mosley, this game, this situation, and maybe the players heard the rumblings. Maybe the players are in support of Jamahl Mosley in a way, and they heard the rumblings. And despite a tough game against the Sacramento Kings, they were able to pull it out because they knew their coach was on the chopping block if they lost this game. Maybe. Only time will tell. But at the same time, I would also say the other point of this is that Jamahl Mosley coaching for his job is now going to reveal a lot about this Magic team. Because this is the biggest storm we've heard around Jamahl Mosley's coaching situation all season long. I think all year long, there's been worries about. Chronologically, think about some of the things we've talked about throughout this season. Jalen Suggs enters the season injured, relying on Anthony Black much more. He becomes a breakout player for this team. Paolo Banchero deals with the groin injury. Franz Wagner goes down with injury. Is out for significant time. Franz comes back, goes back down. Franz comes back, goes back down. Anthony Black goes down with injury. A lot of this time frame, I remember when we had conversations on the podcast where there were literal media pundits poking at Paolo Banchero saying maybe he's not that guy. Every other conversation was being had about this team. Paolo not playing well enough. This team being too injured with Franz Wagner being out. This team being even more injured now when you add Jonathan Isaac and Anthony Black to that list. Like, realistically, there were conversations that went everywhere around the coach. And this is the first time we've really heard any idea of firing the coach from a media perspective. Fans may have been clamoring for this for a minute. But the media is now on a train that I think is necessary. And I'm not saying that the media should draw the attention enough of the front office to make them make a decision. They can't come to the conclusion on their own. That's not how you run a franchise. But I think it's one of those things where it's one thing for Orlando Magic fans to simply be dissatisfied. It's another thing for people who out there and do reporting and do research and put these pieces together of different things that have happened throughout the season. Remember when we were having conversations about whether or not Paolo Banchero and Jamahl Mosley saw eye to eye when there was a conversation about making adjustments versus effort. These are all different things that we've had conversations about this year, but this now, with 2 weeks left, is the first time that real conversations are being had about the future of Jamahl Mosley, and I think they rightfully should be. I think we're in a situation now where when we talk about Jamahl Mosley and his future for this team, I do think his days are numbered. I do think it would take quite the first round playoff series for them to be able to feel justified in bringing Jamahl Mosley back. If the Magic have a first round series where they're the 8th seed and they play the Detroit Pistons and they upset them in the first round with Cade Cunningham coming back from a collapsed lung, maybe the Orlando Magic can convince themselves that, if we also bring back Franz and if we also get back Anthony Black and we run this thing back, maybe make one or two moves on the margin, have Javon Carter for the entirety of a season as opposed to using 50 games towards a Tyus Jones who just did not play up to the bill. Right? You can find yourself as the front office convincing yourself that Jamahl Mosley isn't the problem. I also think a first round exit in 4 or 5 games might be just the thing they need to feel strong enough to pull the trigger, which is hilarious because I don't think that the playoff outcome is going to change the belief of Orlando Magic fans that think Mosley should be gone. I think the Magic, correct me if I'm wrong in this one, and this will go to tell me just how strongly you guys feel about Jamahl Mosley's future with this team. This team could make it out the first round with a first round upset over the Detroit Pistons in round one, and then play the Cleveland Cavaliers in round two and push them to 6 games. And I think Orlando Magic fans would still want Jamahl Mosley removed at the end of the season. You guys let me know in the comment section down below if you guys feel like I'm dragging that. But I feel like from what everyone's been saying all season long, I feel like Orlando Magic fans want heads to roll. And I'm not upset at you guys for feeling that way, but I believe that regardless of the outcome of this season, Orlando Magic fans are going to clamor for them to make a move both with the coach and with the front office, especially with all of the news, which you guys helped inform me of. Thank you so much for that, by the way, that Jeff Weltman's contract expires at the end of this season, which I think is ironic that they've let it play out this far, because if they wanted him to return, I think that there would have been a contract extension by now. And I think the fact that the outcome of the season is something that could maybe play into the hands of whether or not that extension is signed, I think also gives the Magic a package deal out to move off of Jamahl Mosley. Because if they bring in a new general manager, that guy is going to want his guy. He's going to want his first move is going to be his hire. Not a trade, not a second round draft pick. It's going to be bringing in a coach or coaches, quite frankly, as much as I love God, who I think was great from a developmental standpoint for Anthony Black this year. Love Joe Prunty and what he brings as an offensive mind. It's not necessarily showing on the floor. The first thing that's something everybody has to think about too. Any new general manager is going to want to bring in their guy. So I believe that he's coaching for his job in the sense that he's almost playing a prove it deal to the next guy. Because I don't believe Jeff Weltman's being brought back. I don't think Jeff Weltman goes this long without an extension if he is being brought back. And honestly, I think if Jeff Weltman comes back, I think we're stuck with Jamahl Mosley. Hilariously enough. I think we're stuck with Jamahl Mosley if that's the case. If Jeff Weltman is safe, I think Jamahl Mosley is equally as safe. That's a scary belief for Orlando Magic fans that want to see something different happen, but it's also the reality. I believe those two guys are a package deal in one way or another. And it'll be interesting to see how that whole thing shakes out. Before we get into the next portion of the podcast, let's go ahead and shout out today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. And here's the thing, man. Here's the thing. Normally, I would do a normal promo, but here's the reality of the situation. We are coming down to the last 2 weeks of the NBA regular season. We are on the road to the playoffs. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to put your money where your mouth is when you say you know basketball. That's, in my personal opinion, it's the best place. You place down your parlay, you place down your bet, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. Whether you're betting on points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers made, higher or lower, rock with us. We are on the road to the playoffs. The Orlando Magic are going to be in the playoffs in some consideration, whether it's the play-in tournament or a 7-game series in the playoffs in the first round. So lock in with us, because there's going to be a point where starting next week, I'm going to be putting together entries for Underdog Fantasy on every single episode. You guys know sometimes I kind of pick and choose here and there when I'm going to put them together, because usually they're just Orlando Magic centric. Now we are on the road to the playoffs with 2 weeks left, and the postseason is around the corner. We are playing on Underdog Fantasy every single day. So lock in with us. Use promo code BasketballFan to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. Again, that's promo code BasketballFan to let them know that we sent you. That's Underdog Fantasy. Make picks and win money.
Must be 18 plus. 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska. 19 plus in Colorado for some games. 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia. And present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/play and get terms DFSTML for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 helpline at 1-878 or text HOMI 467-369.
So let's talk about the standings. Let's talk about them. And for anybody who's been an avid enough listener, we have been having conversations about the standings every single week. And it's because we're in crunch time. We are in crunch time. And every single week, every single game is going to move the needle in an Eastern Conference that is close as it gets. The Atlanta Hawks are 41-32. And they are a mere 2 games ahead of the Orlando Magic, who currently are tied for 8th in the Eastern Conference with the Charlotte Hornets and the Miami Heat, who the Magic, Hornets, and Heat are all 39-34. The Magic, just to get into the 7th spot, are 1 game behind the Philadelphia 76ers, 1.5 games back of the Toronto Raptors, and as I mentioned beforehand, 2 games behind the Hawks. The volatility for the rest of this season is extreme as far as this mid-6 is concerned. Or, I guess, no, Atlanta's included in this. As far as this mid-6 is concerned, anything can happen up until the final buzzer of the regular season. And so with that being the case, I figured I'd sit down. We have 2 weeks left. Here are the 3 games that I believe are the most important for the Orlando Magic. Must wins, dare I say, for the rest of the season. And now, granted, I believe that the best case scenario for this team is to win out. I believe that the best case scenario for this team in order to be able to position themselves for a good playoff situation is nothing short of 500. At least, and quite frankly, there's 9 games left, so you either can go 5-4 or 4-5. That's the worst case scenario. My personal prediction, I believe that this team is going to go 7-3. Or 7-2. Let's say 6-3. Let me make it more definitive and something that I feel more confident in. I believe that this team is going to go 6-3 through their final 9 games of the NBA season. But here are 3 games the Orlando Magic must win to secure a legitimate postseason spot. Which for me, I'm saying I believe that they can finish top 6. If they go 6-3 or better and they win these 3 games, they will be a top 6 seed by the end of it. Number 1 is Sunday's game against the Toronto Raptors. Again, if I didn't just mention it, the Raptors are only a game and a half ahead of the Orlando Magic, and the Raptors are coming off of a loss. That's a big game because they're in front. Another team that's in front, Wednesday, April 1st, aka April Fool's Day, and we all will look like idiots for falling in love with this Orlando Magic team again if they win the Raptors game and they win the Suns game in a row, and then we get happy-go-lucky against the Atlanta Hawks. This is a game that needs to be a get-back game after watching Nickeil Alexander-Walker drop 41 last time these 2 teams played. Joke's on Orlando if they come into this game lackadaisical, because this should be a game that has their antennas up. Again, the Atlanta Hawks are 2 games ahead of the Orlando Magic in the standings. They are currently on a 3-game winning streak. But if the Orlando Magic hand those 2 teams losses in this time frame, there's a world right there alone. Now, granted, there are other teams that play. That has to be acknowledged. But there's a world right there where they position themselves to be either a 5 or 6 seed because they would have just beat the 5 and 6 seed. 2 teams that, with this close of a margin, things like the tiebreaker close to the end of the season are going to matter that much more. And the final game that I think is the most important for the Orlando Magic is the final one. On the road at TD Garden against the Boston Celtics. There's a few reasons for that. Number 1, it could be the game that's the nail in the coffin for where it is that you end up in the standings when the season is over. It could be one of those situations where If you guys remember years ago, there was a regular season finale game between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. Early Jokic, early Jamahl Mosley. Early Jokic, early Jamal Murray, Jimmy Butler, Karl Anthony Towns together on that team. And it was a final regular season game that was back then, no play-in tournament. It was win and you're in. Simple as that. And I believe that in a tight-knit Eastern Conference like this one, there is a world where that final game can matter that much, where winning against the Boston Celtics in that final game or losing against the Boston Celtics in that final game could be the nail in the coffin that places them as a 5-6 seed with a solidified spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs, or keep them stuck between 7 and 10, having to play either 1 or 2 playoff games in the form of a play-in tournament just to actually make the official postseason. So again, that's April 1st. First off, that's Sunday, this upcoming Sunday, against the Toronto Raptors. April 1st against the Atlanta Hawks. And April 12th, the final game of the regular season for the Magic against the Boston Celtics. Those 3 games to me are the most pivotal, most important games left on the schedule. I believe the Magic are going to go 6-3 through their final 9 games. You guys let me know in the comment section down below what you believe their record will be by the end of that stretch and where you believe they will finish in the standings with the record that you predicted. I'm interested to see what you guys believe because I think that you guys' predictions will also be kind of telling of where you guys feel they are right now coming off of the Sacramento Kings win. Last but not least, I found something pretty unique online. And I wanted to share it with everybody in case you're not familiar. Now, as diehard Orlando Magic fans, maybe you guys are tapped in with Orlando Magic Reddit. It's something that I've become a little bit more accustomed to checking out more as of late than compared to like when I first started recording podcasts covering the Magic every single day. And they put together something that I thought was interesting, and I was going to save it. But I think that we're in this part of the season where I thought it was kind of an interesting conversation, especially given that if this game went differently and Jamahl Mosley maybe gets fired out after the Sacramento Kings loss, I think this kind of thing, like an offseason wish list, would be a huge talking point amongst Orlando Magic fans of like, all right, we fired the coach. Now what do we do? That's what everybody would want to know. And I feel like it was interesting that this was put together. So I'm going to read it out. Shout out to the person who put this together. I'm going to read it all. It's not insanely long, but it's quite the plan. And I think it's kind of interesting. It says, Orlando Magic 2026 offseason wish list. Hiring Taylor Jenkins makes the most sense. He has won 50 games in the West, had a top 5 offense and a top 8 defense, and is an offensive-minded coach who can get the most out of this team on both ends, in my opinion. Vince Williams Jr., John Conchar, Brandon Clark, some Memphis guys we can sign to shore up depth if we hire Taylor Jenkins. Trade Goga for a couple of second-round picks. He is an expiring center, and also waive Jonathan Isaac, which that's something that I feel like is numero uno on the list of things the Magic are going to do this offseason, just based off of some of the reporting we got a few weeks ago from Bobby Marks about the contract structure for Jonathan Isaac, is that if nothing gets done this offseason, Jonathan Isaac will be waived. In the draft, trade up for a center like Flory Badunga, which, by the way, Flory, for those who are interested, I'm not sure how locked in people are on the draft just yet, but I went to Tankathon. And Flory is 6'10", 235-pound center out of Kansas, playing for the Kansas Jayhawks this season. Is coming off of averaging 13.3 points, 9 rebounds, and 2.6 blocks. So essentially what he's saying here is to grab a rim protector type at the second round. He also mentions 2 other guys in Terrace Reed and Ruben Chinyelu. And I want to give these guys their props as well. Terrace Reed is mocked in the second round as well to the Boston Celtics. Another big body center, 6'11", from UConn, 265 pounds, 14 points, 8.9 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game. Last player that they had mentioned was Ruben Chinyelu, and Ruben is a lot lower on the board out of the players. He almost essentially named them in order of like where their draft stock is, according to someone like Tankathon's website. Ruben plays for the Florida Gators. Again, big body, burly center. 6'10", 265 pounds, did average a double-double as a junior, 10.9 points, 11.2 rebounds, only 1 block per game. So more of your big, burly rebounder type, not nearly as impactful as a rim protector as far as creating blocks, but may still be a guy I would have to watch the film. That's something I'll lock into a lot more as we get to the end of the season and we start talking about offseason stuff a lot more. But essentially, the premise of this area is that he's talking about the idea of going after a big burly center that can be a legit rim protector and be somebody who can be a big body rebounder. Then he says, I really like Zuby Ejiofor as a high motor power forward, Brandon Miller and Trayvon Brazil, as a 6'10" athletic power forward with tools. Those are other guys in the second round as well. Trayvon Brazil is somebody who plays for that Arkansas team with Darius Acuff and those guys. Averaged 32. I mean, wish he had averaged 32. Averaged 13.2 points, 7.4 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 1.7 blocks per game, and 1.5 steals at 6'10". I actually, of all the guys he named, I actually like Brazil the most of that group. Against 6'10" athletic power forward type that I think brings something to the table. I honestly wish Cameron Carr out of Baylor could fall, but there's no way with the scoring output that he had this season, 19 points, 5.5 rebounds, and has like the 3-point shooting clip of a guy who shoots 38%. I don't think he's going to be a guy that falls outside the first round. Right now, he's mocked to Atlanta in the 20s, but I think he would be a dope pick. Nonetheless, let's keep working through this. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Desmond Bane trio can be really good. I would like Orlando to trade Wendell Carter for a center upgrade. I wish we had Donovan Clingan. I would trade Wendell and AB for him. Now, that's where you lose me. I would not trade Wendell Carter Jr. and Anthony Black for Donovan Clingan. Love Donovan Clingan. Wouldn't trade him for Wendell Carter Jr. and Anthony Black. That's crazy to me. Especially with the year that Anthony Black is having. Tristan da Silva and Jamahl Cain, who Jamahl Cain is really growing on me, by the way. I like what he brings to the table, and I like that he's been aggressive as a three-point shooter in his time on the floor. Have been really impressive as 6'9" and 6'8" wings who can shoot, defend, and bring good skill set next to our big three. So essentially, the way the roster would shake out is new center, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Desmond Bane, Jalen Suggs, Flory Badunga, which is the player essentially that he's saying out of all of the group, Flory would be the one he would take with the second round pick. Noah Penda, Tristan da Silva, Anthony Black, Jace Richardson, Mo Wagner, Jamahl Cain, Jet Howard, or sign a veteran power forward or buy a late second pick to go get Zuby, and then get Vince Williams Jr., who's going to be dealing with the ACL, who'll probably miss a majority of next season. And last but not least, still keep Javon Carter. Now, a couple of interesting thoughts on that one because I kind of broke it down as we went along, but more specifically the roster. Again, I believe that the new center thing is always an interesting question because how many centers are better than Wendell Carter Jr. that you also can get with the Magic's current crop of talent they would have to dangle in order to make any kind of real trade? Because they don't have first round picks to be able to do that. And even if we do what was mentioned in this, where it was like, where did it say, trade Goga Batadze for a couple of second round picks? Sure. A couple of second round picks paired with Wendell Carter Jr., though, I don't believe is going to get an upgrade over Wendell Carter Jr. Unless you think you can sucker the Brooklyn Nets into a couple of second round picks and Wendell Carter Jr. for Nicholas Claxton. Or if you think that despite all reporting indicating that the Lakers are planning on making a real run at Walker Kessler, the Chicago Bulls are planning on making a real run at Walker Kessler, Utah is planning on retaining Walker Kessler. That's another guy who I think would maybe be a better fit at the center spot. But I don't think that, especially going into essentially unrestricted free agency, First of all, I don't believe that there's any version of a sign and trade that the Utah Jazz are going to want to do that involves the Orlando Magic. So I don't think there's a center that with the current crop, and I mean that specifically, unless you're willing to trade Jalen Suggs as part of the deal, I don't believe there's a center you can get better than Wendell Carter Jr. without having to give up Wendell and maybe somebody who makes some decent money, or give up guys that you like. You might have to give up Wendell as part of a sign-and trade that involves Anthony Black, but it would be somebody better. It would be somebody a bigger name than Donovan Clingan. You wouldn't trade Anthony Black, who before going down with this injury was having a career year, for Donovan Clingan, who, although is getting much more time right now on the Portland Trail Blazers, is still in a pretty deep center rotation with Portland, to the point that we still don't really know the best version of him just yet. Like, I just don't see that being the case. Flory Badunga, I like as a prospect. Of the guys that he mentioned, I think that Flory is a good pick. And I also think that Trayvon Brazile, again, I think would be a really interesting four-man for them as well. I think this is one of those where you have to think about the overall volatility. I would much, for example, it says Jet Howard or sign a veteran power forward or buy a late second for Zuby Ejiofor. So you wouldn't necessarily need to buy it if you are able to trade Goga Batadze for a second round pick that's in this class, right? And I think that would be a cool way to be able to get a Zuby Ejiofor or get a Trayvon Brazile in this draft class. But most importantly, we need guys that can guard, and we need guys that can shoot the three. Because in reality, in the second round, I don't think we're going to find anybody that's going to be like this microwave scoring point guard type that I think would logically fit on this team. I mean, LeBaron Philon is somebody who's marked in the lottery. If we go down to the second round, on Take-A-Thon, Malik Thomas out of Arkansas, freshman Malik Thomas, that was, second fiddle to Darius Acuff, had a quietly dope season. 6'5", 185 pounds, 15.6 points, 3.8 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and 1.5 steals per game. Really like what he brings to the table. Elijah Arenas, if he does go into the draft, could he fall due to the fact that we have a very limited sample size of him, where he could fall farther enough to get to the 40s where Orlando is? Or maybe the Orlando Magic are able to get the pick that Elijah Arenas is mocked to in this Take-A-Thon mock draft for Oklahoma City, who probably doesn't even want this second round pick, given the fact that they already have so many guys on the roster as is. And also they have a, the Thunder have a first round pick right outside of the lottery. Two first round picks right outside of the lottery. So the Thunder could be a team, maybe the Magic go out and try to either move up with, or they acquire their second round pick altogether, right? And go get Elijah Arenas. He's maybe a microwave scorer type off the bench that could be an interesting fit for this team. But outside of that, like, there's not too many guys. Richie Saunders out of BYU, I think he's an interesting fit as well, maybe. But, like, I named 3 guys, and outside of that, just even looking at Take-A-Thon, a majority of the second round is small forward, power forward, centers. And a lot of centers at that, by the way. So, if you can get 2 second round picks made in this draft, and you bring in someone like Elijah Arenas with the first one, and then you bring in someone like Brazile with the second one, I think you actually had a quietly dangerous draft for only being able to pick in the second round. Flory Badunga is an interesting one too if you want to do that, and then if someone like Arenas falls, then you're able to snag him at 44. That would be interesting. I don't know if they need to be redundant. Flory Badunga is a pure 5. And then someone like Brazile is definitely more of like a 3-4 tweener type, but I think probably leans more towards the 4. All of this to say that I'm not going to lie to you. There's a couple of things in here that were a little all over the place. The Vince Williams, John Conchar, Brandon Clark thing, I think that's just trying to bring in guys that are a part of the Taylor Jenkins tree that are kind of falling out of favor with the Memphis Grizzlies, specifically Brandon Clark. I think is probably the one that I would say comes to mind. Vince Williams is just injured, So that's kind of more the thing with him. Taylor Jenkins, I do think would be a pretty interesting fit, especially when you talk about his focus on developing talent. My biggest worry with Taylor Jenkins is he's somebody that loves to play the platoon style, where he'll be willing to take all his starters off and play a full 10 deep roster, and I don't know if we have the depth for that. Maybe that's a good thing as far as developing guys like Tristan da Silva, like Anthony Black, like Jace Richardson, like Mo Wagner. Maybe that's a good thing that he's much more willing to get deeper into his bench bag. I'm not sure, but I do think he would be an interesting fit. I like Mike Malone a little bit more if we're talking about upgrading from Jamahl Mosley, because Taylor Jenkins, quite frankly, to me, feels a lot like what Jamahl Mosley is, that developmental coach that's there for the version of the team that they can be good, they can even be dangerous, but like there's a ceiling to them because he's setting his ways a certain way where even in the playoffs, he's running 9-10 deep rotations. So it feels very similar to something that I would have to worry about with Jamahl Mosley from a coaching perspective versus someone like Mike Malone. I think he's more likely to make the tough decisions in an 8-man rotation come playoff time and things like that. But yes, I think they have to move off of Goga. I think they do have to waive Jonathan Isaac. I think you should let go of Jet Howard. I think you should bring back Jamal Cain, and I do think you should rely on Tristan da Silva on that second unit a lot more. I think you should bring back Javon Carter. And again, I think if you can get a microwave scorer type or a big burly center with with one second round pick, and if you're able to get a second round pick, whether it's your own that you already have at 44 or someone else's higher up in the second round, like a Oklahoma City Thunder, for example, who have multiple first round picks and might not want that second round pick, or who's another team that may not want their second round pick? Brooklyn has 2 second round picks. The Knicks have 2 second round picks, including the 33rd pick. Maybe they don't want those, and you're able to get one of those second round picks and get a center or microwave scorer, and then a power forward or microwave scorer in this draft class. If they pick right, they could quietly do something really crazy. So you guys let me know how you guys feel about that. Just thought that was a really interesting overall layout, and I think it's kind of a decent plan. I think the time is up on Jamahl Mosley. The core 3 are set. I don't see them, if they change coaches, I don't see them getting rid of Jalen Suggs in the same offseason. I don't think they should trade Anthony Black and Wendell Carter Jr. for Donovan Clingan. But I do think they can get some better center rotation help in this draft class with a sneaky pick or two in the second round. And then with a different coach, Javon Carter as a locker room leader, so to speak, over the course of an entire season. Jamal Cain with, I think, deservingly a more long-term roster spot on this team. And hopefully a cleaner bill of health next season. Maybe they finally look like the team we think they are. So you guys let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about that as well. With that all being said, there's been another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that post notification bell so you always know we're dropping new videos. And I will see you guys next time. But until then,